Paddy Dingle, Dominic Brunt, has been dealt a devastating blow in Emmerdale after visiting his dad Bear Wolf, Joshua Richards, in his secure mental health unit. Earlier in the year, Bear, who was enslaved on Ray Walters's Joe Absalom farm, escaped captivity and later throttled the villain, as a horrified Paddy and Dylan Penders, Fred Kettle, watched on. They then helped to bundle his body into the back of Jai Sharma's, Chris Bisson, depot van. After weeks of trying to keep the crime under wraps, Bear crumbled under the pressure and confessed everything to his therapist. He then picked up the phone and called the police. Ever since, Paddy has hoped that he could get his dad a self-defense charge, though that's looking increasingly unlikely. Just days after being released on strict bail conditions, he broke them by smashing a mirror and wandering off to the hospital. The busy ED couldn't attend to his injuries straight away, and he lashed out towards Jacob Gallagher, Joe Warren Plant. Fearful of the consequences, he wandered out into the night and was later found by the patch of land where he was forced to bury another victim, Anya. Paddy soon found him and promised to make things right by paying for him to stay in a mental health facility. Fearsome DS Walsh, Amanda Ryan, warned that he wouldn't be apprehended for breaking his bail following advice from a psychological report, though the time spent in hospital was just delaying his inevitable, eventual arrest. In today's episode, Paddy paid a visit to the unit to see Bear. He seemed much chirpier, and it was clear that he was on the road to recovery. He explained that the talking therapy had made him realize how badly Ray had treated him, and he was feeling better each and every day. While this put a smile on Paddy's face, he explained that by admitting this publicly, there would be no chance of the case being dropped by the CPS. To Paddy's dismay, Bear said that he'd already told the doctors, and his solicitor, that he was discharging himself that afternoon. Later that day, Bear returned home. But news soon reached DS Walsh, who said she'd spoken to the hospital, and he'd now be taken to the station to answer more questions relating to breaking his bail conditions. Will Bear spend the rest of his days in a cell? Months earlier, Bear Wolf had endured unimaginable suffering. Once known for his strength and fearless personality, Bear was reduced to a prisoner on Ray Walters' isolated farm. Ray had built a reputation as one of the most dangerous villains the village had seen in years. Manipulative and ruthless, he treated Bear not as a man, but as property. During those horrific months, Bear was forced to work tirelessly under Ray's command. Every day brought new threats, humiliation, and violence. Ray seemed to relish the control he held over his captive. For Bear, the physical pain was only part of the ordeal. The psychological torment left even deeper scars. But eventually, the moment came when Bear could endure no more. A violent escape. When Bear finally managed to escape Ray's control, the confrontation that followed was explosive. In a moment fueled by rage, fear, and months of suppressed trauma, Bear attacked Ray Walters. The attack was brutal. As the two men struggled, Bear wrapped his hands around Ray's throat and squeezed with all the fury that had built up inside him. Watching the horrifying scene unfold were Paddy Dingle and Dylan Penders. Both were shocked and terrified. By the time the struggle ended, Ray Walters was dead. A desperate cover-up. Panic quickly set in. Paddy knew that if the truth emerged, his father's life would be destroyed. Despite the clear argument for self-defense, the circumstances were complicated. Bear's violent history and Ray's mysterious disappearance could easily be twisted against him. In a moment of desperation, Paddy and Dylan made a terrible decision. They would hide the truth. Together, the three men moved Ray's lifeless body and placed it in the back of a van belonging to Jai Sharma. The plan was simple: make the death disappear. But secrets in Emmerdale rarely stay buried for long. The weight of guilt. For weeks, the secret hung over Paddy and Bear like a dark cloud. Every conversation felt strained. Every unexpected knock at the door made their hearts race. Bear struggled the most. The trauma of captivity, combined with the guilt of taking a life, pushed him to the brink. Even though Ray had been cruel and dangerous, Bear could not escape the haunting memory of that moment. Eventually, the pressure became unbearable. During a therapy session, Bear finally broke down and told the truth. And once the words were spoken, there was no going back. Bear picked up the phone and called the police. Paddy's fight for justice. From the moment the truth came out, Paddy dedicated himself to protecting his father. He believed that Bear's actions were clearly self-defense. After all, Ray had kidnapped and abused him for months. Surely the courts would understand. But the situation was more complicated than Paddy had hoped. Legal experts warned that Bear's actions after Ray's death, particularly the attempt to hide the body, could weaken any claim of self-defense. Still, Paddy refused to give up. Bail conditions broken. When Bear was eventually released under strict bail conditions, Paddy hoped things might start improving. But Bear's fragile mental state soon led to another crisis. During a moment of distress, Bear smashed a mirror and stormed out of the house. He ended up wandering into the hospital's busy emergency department. The doctors and nurses were overwhelmed, unable to treat him immediately. Frustration and confusion overwhelmed Bear. In a sudden outburst, he lashed out at Jacob Gallagher, who happened to be nearby. Realizing what he had done, Bear fled into the night. A haunting return. Later, Bear was found in a chilling location. He had returned to a patch of land connected to one of the darkest moments of his captivity. It was the place where he had once been forced to bury another victim, Anya. The location represented the worst memories of his imprisonment. When Paddy finally tracked him down, the emotional reunion was heartbreaking. Bear looked broken and exhausted. Paddy promised that he would do everything possible to help him recover. A temporary solution. Determined to protect his father, Paddy arranged for Bear to stay in a secure mental health facility. It was meant to be a place of healing. And for a while, it seemed to work. Doctors and therapists helped Bear confront the trauma he had endured. Gradually, his mood began to improve. When Paddy visited him during a recent episode, Bear appeared calmer than he had in months. For the first time in a long while, there was hope. A difficult realization. During their conversation, Bear explained that therapy had helped him see the truth. He finally understood how badly Ray Walters had abused and manipulated him. Talking through those memories had allowed him to begin healing. But there was an unexpected consequence. Bear's newfound clarity meant he could no longer pretend that the incident was anything less than what it was. If he admitted publicly that he had killed Ray, even in anger and desperation, the Crown Prosecution Service would almost certainly pursue the case. For Paddy, the realization was devastating. A shocking decision. Then Bear dropped another bombshell. He revealed that he had already spoken to the doctors and his solicitor. That afternoon, he planned to discharge himself from the facility. Paddy was stunned. Leaving the unit meant facing the legal consequences head-on. But Bear seemed strangely at peace with the decision. After months of hiding and fear, he was ready to face whatever came next. Trouble returns. Later that day, Bear returned home. For a brief moment, it felt like life might return to normal. But the peace didn't last. News quickly reached D.S. Walsh, the determined detective investigating the case. Walsh had already been suspicious about Bear's behavior during his time on bail. Now that he had left the mental health facility, she saw an opportunity to push the investigation forward. She informed Paddy that Bear would soon be taken to the police station for further questioning. Paddy's worst fear. As the reality of the situation sinks in, Paddy faces the possibility he has been dreading all along. Bear could be arrested again. And this time, he might not be released. The thought of his father spending the rest of his life behind bars is unbearable. But the law may not see things the same way Paddy does. To the courts, there are still too many unanswered questions. What happens next? As the drama continues in Emmerdale, fans are left wondering what the future holds. Will the courts recognize that Bear acted out of desperation and self-defense? Or will his attempt to cover up Ray Walters' death ultimately seal his fate? For Paddy, the battle is far from over. But one thing is certain. The emotional cost of this tragedy has already changed his life forever. And as the police investigation continues, the question hanging over the village is impossible to ignore. Will Bear Wolf spend the rest of his days in a prison cell?